Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much.
Of course.
It's great to be here today. My name is Christian. Yes, one person excited. Thank you. I'm born and raised in San Francisco. There are a few of us natives left. And my wife and I, we have been in nonprofit organization work here in San Francisco going on now 24 years with 3 different nonprofits. But in 2017, after serving in the Tenderloin District for 17 years, my wife and I looked around the city and we saw a few things that really bothered us and burdened us. For the 17 years we spent in the Tenderloin, and first of all, you have the greatest last name ever. I mean, love wins. Come on. I come up here with the last name Huang. It doesn't mean much, but in Chinese, it means yellow. Okay. 17 years we served in the Tenderloin, and my wife and I, after doing that for 17 years, we kind of felt, to be honest, a little burnt out. And we started looking around the city. We said, surely there's got to be an easier way to reach people before they end up here. And so we just kind of felt the season of life that we were in, let's move upstream and let's try to help kids get a fair shot at life. Let's break the cycles of poverty and despair. Let's empower them so they don't have to come down to the TL. Because when you reverse engineer most people's stories in the Tenderloin, and I have a lot of friends in the Tenderloin, it's usually 1, 2, 3 traumatic things that happen into their life, usually around the formative years of their lives, childhood, early teens. And just like if I were to throw out my back this morning, what do? Pop 2 Advil, right? Well, these guys have been through so much trauma. What do? They medicate as well. So we should never judge someone in the Tenderloin, like my brother there walking around. We shouldn't judge people for that because we don't know their story. But when you do hear their story, we realize how important childhood is. So that's where my wife and I were like, okay, we got to do something with the children in San Francisco. So we started asking friends, hey, what's concerning you most about the city? Man, and the answers went all over the place. But I'll tell you one thing, no one mentioned children in San Francisco. It was politics. It was the growing divide between the rich and the poor. It was affordable housing. It was innovation. It was, all kinds of different answers. But no one brought up children in the narrative of San Francisco, except I think one person said, children are too expensive to raise here. That's why they're all leaving. Families leave. So we realized, okay, so children are really the forgotten people group of San Francisco. I think there's more dogs than there are children in this city. And at the same time, we were taking our kids. I have 4 children, 9, 12, 15, 18, but that was 7 years ago, so they were younger. And we were taking them to all the rec centers in the city for sports programs. And we'd be there on the weekend or late at night, and I would inevitably see these children just by themselves. And, I love talking to people. And, one time we were in Potrero Hill. My son was playing in Junior Warriors, and he had won. And so we're coming out, and I just saw this kid just sitting in the playground crying. And I said, dude, what's going on? Are you okay? And someone had stolen his bike. Someone had stolen his phone. And I just wanted to know his story more. And I was like, what do you do all weekend? Where are you at? Should we call your parents? The kid wanders around. When he's not in school, he's basically left to himself. That really bothered us. And then we started to realize because we spent so many years, 17 years in the Tenderloin. San Francisco is like Hunger Games, by the way. No one likes to leave their district. Okay. So I was hyper-focused on the Tenderloin, and I didn't realize these other neighborhoods until we started bringing our kids there. And then we started seeing something. Ted, did you have a question, brother? Oh, he was about somewhere between 9 and 11 years old. No one to call, by the way. That's why I was like, hey, should we call your parents? He's like, no, there's no one. And I was like, gosh, it really bothered me. I teared up because our family's so loving. We all go to the one kid's game. He's got a support system. We go out to eat after. It just really bothered me. So and then we started seeing the other districts. I'm like, gosh, I've lived here my whole life, and I've never seen Double Rock. I've never seen Potrero Hill, on this side of Potrero Hill, not the gentrified side, the other side. And I started seeing these neighborhoods and realizing there are true gaps in the city where there's little to no services. I mean, Double Rock, 1,100 families put in 4 building complexes, and no restaurant, no grocery store, not even a liquor store for over 1 mile away. I mean, and again, we're raising a family in the city. So what happens when you need milk as a mom? you have to go walk through Hunters Point to just go get some milk at a liquor store. I mean, it's just insane. So, and then the last thing that bothered us was we're the most unchurched city in America. So kids and families don't even go to church, because my natural thought was like, man, if we can just get families into faith communities, that's really where the magic sauce is right there, because they get surrounded by people, they get help. And then we're the most, families don't go to church in San Francisco. So ultimately, all of these things burden us to the point where we say we got to do something. So if there are whole neighborhoods that are underserved, how do we eliminate the first barrier, which is access? If kids are an afterthought, how could we prioritize them? And then lastly, if kids and families don't go to church, how can we Amazon Prime God's love directly to them? That's it. That's when we started Mobilize Love. So Mobilize Love, we exist to show up and give hope. Now, showing up, it's our whole model. It's our whole mission. In fact, our mantra is love shows up. It's trademarked, by the way. We just got it. And anyone who said, anyone could say, I love you from afar, right? But the proof's in the pudding. The proof is in actually showing up. True love shows up. Anyone could say, I love you. Those are just words, but showing up is the proof. But here's one thing. Presence without purpose is really unnerving. You can't just show up to a community without a purpose. You can't just show up and say, man, we're just here to, when we were starting this organization, we were talking to people and they're like, yeah, you guys just need to just show up and love people. I'm like, well, then we don't need a nonprofit for that. We should just do that with our lives. It's free. We need to organize. You need to have what's called strategy. Presence without purpose is unnerving. That's why when we do show up, what's the strategy? Well, for us, the strategy is we'll use outreach trucks to provide mobile after-school programs and then mobile human services for kids and families in under-resourced communities. So our fleet of trucks right now, and we launched one per year since 2018. We didn't plan it that way. It just happened to be that way. 2018 was a laundry truck. Then we launched the stage truck. 2019, 2020, we launched the food truck a week before the shelter in place. 2021 is our stories truck, which is a mobile library and literacy program. 22 was the refrigerated truck. 23 was a distribution truck. And then this year, we're launching the wellness truck this month, May. Yes, it's exciting. Now, more than just sharing, what we do and how we do it, I do want to share, because of this group and who you are, a little bit about the philosophy and strategy behind what we do. This is where we'll spend kind of the bulk of the time, because it matters a lot. Why does Mobilize Love even exist? What strategic needs are you addressing? And why does our work even matter? Because looking at the needs across the city, we know one thing. We can't solve all the issues, but we can tackle vitally important issues that need to be addressed. So speaking of the needs of children in the Bay Area, I call this the 4-3-2-1. 1 in 4 children are experiencing socioeconomic poverty, food insecurity, and some form of neglect, which comes from, that basically means your parents are working so hard, the kids are left alone to wander around. That's a form of neglect. That's 1 in 4 kids in the Bay Area. 1 in 3 youth are experiencing some form of a mental or social emotional health issues. I think whoever's going to share next about teenagers, that's 1 in 3 youth in this city are experiencing some form of mental health issue, which could be depression, anxiety, or sadness. 1 in 2 children right now here in the Bay Area, folks, 1 in 2 children in the 3rd grade are reading below their grade level. And almost every single child we surveyed over a span of 2 years does not belong to a faith community, implying there's almost relatively no moral, ethical, or spiritual guidance for the children. So when we show up and give hope, if you double click on the word hope, what does hope mean? It really speaks to our 3 pillars. And I know this is a wordy slide, but let me we use the alliteration of 3P, but hope for us, when you double click it, first of all, it's meeting physical needs. Meeting physical needs. Our target demographic of who we're trying to serve are really our children and families that are experiencing what we call extreme low-income families, ELI families. ELI families in the Bay Area are families that are making less than $60,000. And not to, bore you with a bunch of numbers, but that's less than $5,000 a month as a family. 52% goes to rent. 40% goes to all the other bills and food. By the time a family is done just paying their rent and their bills and buying groceries, a family of 3 on average is left with $400 a month to survive off of for 30 days. $400 a month. You can't even, I mean, that's 2 or 3 dinners in San Francisco. So we realize at Mobilize Love, now we're not addressing, as it relates to physical needs, we're not addressing the systemic issue. We understand that, because the systemic issue for families that are experiencing extreme poverty here would be affordable housing and a livable wage. I mean, that's what they really need, affordable housing and a livable wage. And I will tell you this, the system is totally broken in San Francisco. I'm not diving into politics. I'm just telling you truth. Because for these families who are the most vulnerable population in San Francisco, if you don't believe me, they are the fastest growing segment of homelessness is families now. The face of poverty has changed. The face of homelessness has changed. I used to think middle-aged man. When I was a kid, it was a middle-aged man, a veteran, white, black, Asian. That's who it used to be. Nowadays, single mother, 2 children. Fastest growing segment, 41%. Now, what do these families need? The system is broken. The first rung of the ladder for them to get out is 9 feet high, folks. They either have to stay dependent on the government to stay in San Francisco for almost all the things that they need. They need to get it subsidized fully by the government, or they need to make a ton of money to survive. You need a lot of money to stay in San Francisco. So it's broken. So we understand at Mobilize Love, look, hey, we're not fixing systemic issues. We're not offering affordable housing or livable wage. But what we will do is something vitally important for these families, especially ELI families. ELI families, they are the families that have too much month and not enough money. So you know what we do? We come in and we address the needs that they have most: food, clothing, shoes, laundry, haircuts. Telling you, man, these families, when they don't have enough money for their children, they don't cut their hair. We had one family, they will only cut their hair at our annual outreach. Wellness screenings, essential necessities like household amenities, seasonal goods, hygiene, beauty, and school supplies. So that's what we do. We're not solving systemic issues as it relates to physical needs, but we will come in and we'll bless the families, and it goes a long way because these families need it. Now, it goes a long way. And it's actually the entry point to building relational equity with the families in the community. Okay, but it's not the most strategic thing we do. A lot of nonprofits meet physical needs. That doesn't make us unique. What makes us unique is that we're mobile. They don't have to travel to us. So that is unique, but that's not the most strategic thing we do. The most strategic thing we do is actually the second pillar. It's teaching personal life skills. Now, this is through a lot of research and surveys, and then through our 17 or 24 plus years of experience in helping kids in the inner city, is realizing that there is an educational gap. Now, in a room like this, it's safe to say not all of us have the same beliefs. We don't share the same worldview. That's okay. We value diversity. However, I would like to share that Mobilize Love is a faith-based organization. But I will say also that we're not the weird type of Christians. We don't picket protests and point out flaws in others. Those are the weird type of Christians. We're just more inspired by actually the work and life of Jesus, who, in fact, one morning a couple years ago, I sat down and I read the whole book of Mark, and I was just jotting down the themes of Jesus's life and ministry. And there is a strong case, a few things to note. He was always on the move. Oftentimes, he'd just show up different place to different place, and he would meet physical needs. Okay, that's not solving systemic issues. He'd feed 5,000 people. Guess what? They're hungry the next day. It's fine. But he met physical needs. But he would couple it with a fantastic teaching that would get people to shift their worldview. He'd ask them questions to contemplate the important things in life. So there could be a very strong case that Jesus' main themes of his ministry was he was mobile, he met needs, and he taught people. In other words, you know, and he probably used donkeys, but today we use diesel. Come on, somebody. All the environmentalists are like, stop. I'm sorry. I don't know how else to do it. Those electric cars are too expensive. So anyways, I'm a firm believer if Jesus was around today, he'd probably have some trucks going neighborhood to neighborhood. But yeah, Mark 6:6, it says Jesus went around teaching from village to village. Mobilize Love. That's what we do. So although we may not share the same faith, I do want to just say that our common ground is probably that we can agree that children have to be a priority in San Francisco. Again, I don't want to dive into politics, but Um, the misappropriation of the funds spent in this city is ridiculous. And I know because the DCYF fund, that's the Department of Children and Youth Fund that just was released, they cut nonprofits and their services for children and youth, and we were part of it. And it frankly made me upset. Yes, it's hard for me to reconcile getting 2 pandas in a zoo when you're cutting 100 nonprofits of their funding. That's the only thing I'll say politically. But we may not agree on our faith or have that, but we can agree that children have to be a priority. Now, with that said, I would like to just share just a couple of principles from Scripture that really frame why we do this second pillar. Because in Hosea chapter 4, there's actually a principle that it describes a city that is suffering from moral decay, injustice, lack of guidance, and spiritual void. Then it culminates with this verse in 6 where God says basically this: my children are destroyed for lack of knowledge. In other words, the principle is this. Again, we may not agree on the importance of the Bible in our lives. That's fine. But the principle is true. A child's lack of knowledge can have detrimental effects on their life and can set them on a trajectory that is negative. It's often what kids don't know or haven't learned that can hurt them on later in life. That's why there's actually a command in Proverbs 22:6 says, teach children the way they should go, so when they're older, they don't go away from it. So that's the most strategic thing we do at Mobilize Love is this second pillar, teaching children. But what do we teach them? We teach them personal life skills in 3 areas: social emotional learning, spiritual life lessons, and literacy. So that's really speaking to our flagship program, which is it's called ML Kids, where we'll bring 3 different trucks, a food truck, a stage truck, and a storage truck. And we'll feed them an early supper through our food truck, a nice hot meal. We don't serve, okay, I won't go down, but we serve high quality hot meals from our food truck in their neighborhood, right to the children. So they eat from their early supper. Then they experience a 45-minute kids presentation from the stage truck where we teach spiritual life lessons, social emotional learning lessons in the stage of drama, spoken word, puppet shows, games, all kinds of things to teach children. And then lastly, the stories truck, which is to engage them in a gamified literacy program. So the question may be, hey, don't we have schools and churches and libraries who aim for kind of the same goals as you are? Yes. Well, first I'll say 2 things. One, there can never be enough programs for children in this city. We need more. But secondly, if you're parents in the room, have you ever tried to teach your child something and you tell them 1,000 times the same thing? It doesn't resonate with them. They don't receive it. Then all of a sudden, someone comes along in their life. They say the exact same thing, and our kids are like, oh my gosh, you know what I learned today? And it's like, what is the difference? It's the same lesson. It's the same truth. It was packaged differently. It didn't come from mom and dad. It came from an outsider. Well, that's what Mobilize Love is. Actually, at the end of the day, Mobilize Love, hey, do you know I should have brought it, but do you know the candy Pez? Mobilize Love is basically Pez. There's really kind of no power in a hot meal or in a book or in a social emotional learning lesson. This is kind of just dry. The power is in the extravagant love that we show the children when 3 trucks roll up to your neighborhood. Staff pour out of the trucks. They start setting up. Volunteers start showing up. Music starts blaring. Kids are experiencing. They smell the food coming from the food truck. It's the novelty and the experience of how we're delivering the lessons that perk the kids' ears up, and they say, okay, I'm here to learn now. We've had so many kids. We have principals of public schools say, hey, our kids hate school until you show up. We usually show up like on a Wednesday, and those like they can't stand school Monday and Tuesday. They get excited on Wednesday, and they ride that excitement into the weekend, Thursday and Friday. Kids who don't like reading. They don't like books. If you face children with a bicycle and a basketball and a book, very few are picking up that book. But Mobilize Love is basically like Pez. We do literacy in a way where we gamify and reward every 20 minutes. We gamify, we reward, and we speak life over them. We gamify, we reward, and we speak life over them. And they just get addicted to confidence after. That's all we are, really. It's nothing new, but it's just packaged differently. And then the last one is establishing presence. Again, in 24 years of nonprofit work, I'll tell you one truth. And if you don't remember anything else, just remember this. When I was in the Tenderloin, people spoke of the unhoused and the addicted as if they were issues to solve. And then, my wife and I, we also serve as chaplains for the Giants. And so we work with pro athletes. And then in that world, people talk about them as putting the best product on the field. So people are products to sell. And that's a real pet peeve of mine. People are not issues to solve or products to sell. Children and families are not problems to fix, folks. They are people to love. And here's the thing. The best way we can love the children and families of this city is by being present. Because when you're positioned, presence is about proximity. And when we are positioned when we have an established presence in their neighborhood and we have built relational equity with them, then we're positioned to help them with more help as needed. I still go back to that example of when a father was being evicted. He's a single dad. He just lost his mother to death and his wife to MS. And he was a single father, dropped his girl off in our reading program. And when we closed up for the day, the girl was still there alone and I couldn't get a hold of him. And I was trying to track him down. I'm like, dude, where are you at? No reply, no reply. Our staff had to stay an extra hour. And he came and he had taken a nap and he couldn't wake up. He was so exhausted. And I talked to him. He's like, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm getting evicted. I was able to point him to Open Door Legal to fight the eviction case. Now, see, we don't solve the systemic issue, but we are positioned relationally to find them more help as needed. Why? Because of establishing presence. Establishing presence. And for children, love is spelled T-I-M-E. Now, for all of you who are disruptors in the technological world, I'll tell you this, there is no hack for human connection. Sorry to say that. There's no hack for human connection. You just basically have to get barbaric with it, show up, and spend time with them. So, as important as strategy is, an ounce of showing up outweighs a pound of wishful thinking. Okay, I'll close with this. Lastly, Mobilize Love is not just a nonprofit, but we're lastly and most importantly an idea. And the idea is that love shows up. And here's what we learned. Whoever shows up wins the battle of influence. Whoever shows up is going to win the battle of influence. Children, if all they see are the guys on the block, guess what they'll become? Guys on the block. I see it every day when we're out there. Someone has to enter into their world, speak life over them, empower them with literacy, a social emotional tool belt, and start thinking about what life's really all about so they can start thinking bigger and beyond their zip code and realize that, and it's not just about getting out, folks. It's about thriving where you're at. And, but in order to do that, someone's got to show up, and whoever's going to show up is going to win the battle of influence, whether that's negative or positive. If you looked at my wife, I wish I had a picture of her, and then you looked at me, and then you looked at my wife again, because you'd have to do a double take, and then you looked at me, one thought would come to your mind. How did you get her? I know, I wish he'd come see me after. Because the reality is, when I first met my wife, she was dating awesome guy. Actually, we all went to the same Bible college, right? He was like 6'2". He was kind of the main man on campus. He had a phenomenal job. He was a youth pastor at a mega church, driving a convertible Mustang. He's just ripped. He still is ripped, just an awesome guy. And she was dating him. And I looked the same. I basically was a fair, chubby Asian guy, just walking around, and my vehicle was a church van with 15 seats in the back that was driven by natural gas. You have to fill up at a PG&E station. Anyways, that's when I met my wife, and well, fast forward, he took a little too long to propose, but guess what? Guess who kept showing up? Me. Hey, how's it going? Yeah. Oh, you need a ride? Hop in my 15-passenger van. Yep. Natural gas. That's what I'm talking about. He took too long, and I was there. Whoever shows up wins the battle of influence. We've been married now 21 years. We have 4 kids. And she regrets it every day. No, I'm joking. Okay, I want to close with this exercise. I want to bring it back to you. If you would just patronize me for a second, just close your eyes and think about your childhood. Okay, and just one simple question, honestly. When you were a child, who showed up for you? Who's coming to mind? Is it a parent, a coach, a teacher, an uncle, an aunt, a cousin, a neighbor, a friend, a pastor? Now, keep it positive, because some of you in this room, you didn't have a great childhood. And so you're thinking, I'll tell you who didn't show up. No, keep it positive, because even if there was one interaction, and that's what's powerful about childhood memories, it could have been one person that came into your world for only one event, but because they spoke something to you, or you had a pleasant experience that made you feel confident and made you feel value, they're coming to your mind right now. And I'm reminded what Maya Angelou said. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. Okay, you can open your eyes. Who came up to your mind? Now, anyone could just say, I love you from afar. Hey, we love the kids in the families. We're doing everything we can. No, I don't believe that. Someone's got to show up in their world. And whoever shows up is going to win the battle of influence. Now, I close by this. That's just what we feel called to do. Okay, that's our strategy. And if that aligns with you, be more than happy to plug you in. But the idea of Mobilize Love is, how will you show up in the Bay Area for others? That's the existential question for you. How will you show up? No one can do it all, but everyone can do something. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you for the amazing work that you do. We now have about 15 minutes for questions. Of course, Ellen has a question. Let's keep it short.
Well, thank you. I finally had a brother in Christ speak like Jesus. Thank God for you.
Yes.
And just in case you don't know, I'm running for mayor of San Francisco, and my campaign says, protect children and let God arise in San Francisco. So Thank you. We are working in the same team.
Thank you for your work. Team. Yes. Yes, Mr. Ted. You know,
is this better?
Yeah.
So for the recording, how can we scale this out to solve the problem? Like, you guys are doing amazing work with the children you reach. How many children are there in the city? What would it take to go to put a net that's big enough that we say there is not a single vulnerable child in the city or in this community, you know, because as of last week or whatever, you know, like that, up to date?
There's 135,000 kids in San Francisco alone, and per capita, we're one of the major metropolises that has the least amount of children. But there's still 135,000 kids and youth, Stefan, right? So, and by the way, our programs are really geared for K through 5. That's where Stefan enters, because we need them. We need help after that.
Hey, one question on top of that: how many neighborhoods do you reach, and how many do you hope to reach in what time period?
Right now, so I'll just speak to the ML Kids program, because we do stuff all over, but it'd be too hard to talk about that. ML Kids is at 6 sites in San Francisco, primarily on the southeast side of the city. We have over 230 children every week in our programs. Last year, 309, because we run in semesters, spring and fall. Last year, 309 children were enrolled in our literacy program, which was the biggest year we had so far. So that's 309 kids in the literacy program. But on average, it's over 220 kids every single week in our 6 sites. We do have a scaling plan, because what's been happening is we built this fleet of trucks really for San Francisco, but poverty pockets are popping up all over the Bay. And we get requests from guys like Finney in Westgate, bring your trucks over. Father's House in Oakland, bring your trucks over. Resonate, you know, all of down the peninsula, CPC in Foster City, because they are starting to understand the model it works. And so they're like, can you bring the trucks? And so what happened is putting tension on the one fleet we have. So we actually do have a plan to build a regional fleet of trucks that'll just be available. So through church partners for the neighborhoods they would like to reach. That's how we do it sustainably, because Mobilize Love, we have the assets of the trucks, and we have the most important asset, which is our staff that have the knowledge of how to serve a community and mobilize volunteers, but we don't have the manpower. So that's why we'd have to leave into the church. So it's very mutually beneficial. I'll give you one example. CPC Foster City just funded a brand new truck for us, $90,000, where it's going to be a mobile screen truck, just like this. Because I was like, you know what? I know we don't want to put more screens in front of the kids, but you know what? It's just what lands. They love puppet shows. They love the analog stuff. But if we can get a screen, we could do outdoor movies. I mean, we could teach a social emotional learning lesson. We could produce it in a nice film studio, and then we can get kids involved in the production. But let's get a screen truck like they do in Vegas, repurpose that. Instead of pointing people to buffets, we'll point them to social emotional learning, spiritual life lessons. And so they're funding a truck for us, but they have a school in mind that they want to serve. They want to steer their congregation to serve one school in particular. And so we're starting that this fall. That'll be outside of San Francisco. So we do have a model in play, but basically it's $7 million. $7 million to be in the North Bay. No, excuse me, we stopped North Bay. It would be East Bay, South Bay, Peninsula, San Francisco, 4 regions.
My question was scaling out to serve all of the 138,000 kids in San Francisco.
Oh, wow. I mean, I don't know. So last year, our organization served over 40,000 people in total, and 8,000 of them were children of San Francisco. 8,000 is not a small number for San Francisco. 8,000 children of the city were in our programs. How do we serve all of? I have no idea. Money. I think if we had all the money.
Not 138,000, because 138,000, a certain portion of them are affluent and are doing great.
Correct. Yes, you're right.
I'd be very interested in us figuring out together that number and that plan.
Yeah, I would too. Getting stressed out thinking about it. I'm gonna just take a sip of this.
And with my brothers trying to solve this afternoon, which I love. I love the solution today. And
I love it, Ted.
And it seems like what you're doing really could benefit from some sort of decentralized connective tissue to, sounds with Stephan and Chandra and what other sort of mentoring organizations and other organizations that can step up. Have you considered something like that of being a part of something where you build a network perhaps throughout the Bay Area that you could be a part of?
Yeah, we actually have a business model for a nonprofit. It's an actual business model called Engine, playing off the fact that we're all mobile. But the Engine is really, we partner with 3 C's: churches, community partners, and corporate partners. The community partners is our strongest partner. We don't do anything alone, Mobilize Love. I mean, we do very few things alone. Maybe just a handful of things alone. Everything we do through partnerships. Every single one of the sites we're at has a community partner that's there 7 days a week. We're not there 7 days. We pop in. Like I said, we're the novelty and the experience of a weekly program that ignites desire to even want to learn in a kid. But they have a school, they have a community leader that we partner with. So we partner with community leaders. We're totally collaborative. We'll partner with anyone almost, because we can't and won't do it alone. We're very focused on just what we do, but we're more than happy to bring within the fold other partners to offer us additional services.
So first of all, thank you. I'm walking out of here with significantly more hope than when I entered. So appreciate what you guys are doing. Awesome. I was wondering, I just wanted to hear about like what sort of problems you guys are having, like what's blocking you right now, aside from money, like particularly like how can all of us help you?
To be honest, it would be a workforce, volunteers, because I would say our strongest sites have a committed church partner attached to it. Now, you don't have to be from a church. I'm just saying that was the easiest one for me to go after, because part of the Christian faith is like, fiduciary responsibility of caring for the neighborhood you're a part of. And so the strongest sites have a church attached to it. I speak of New North Church that's at one school. Man, we have over 100 kids a week at just that one site. It's actually 2 sites, one neighborhood. But they bring 7 to 10 volunteers every week. And here's what's exciting. Seniors that have time. Because a lot of you young people, you're out making money, changing the world as you should. And you don't have the time Monday through Friday, because we operate after school hours. So usually when I go to the churches, I say, all the seniors, and I try not to make eye contact, but like all the seniors, you have the most important resource of time, and kids need that the most. And so let's marry those two together. We're only asking for 1 day a week, 3 to 4 hours, and for only 13 weeks at a time to come and read to the children, be a mentor to the children. So a workforce, if we had people committed to a site and would just stay there, that's the greatest gift, especially so that adults aren't cycling in and out of their lives.
Hi,
Yes.
thank you for a good presentation.
Thank you.
If I may make a suggestion, because you did call out a problem. On Monday, the kids are depressed. On Tuesday, they hate their lives. And on Wednesday, they get excited when you show up. And then that continues to Thursday and Friday. So right now you're on the outside trying to, there's this institution called the school system. And you're on the outside trying to like catch kids and put them back there, you know? The goal is, I went to Lowell, by the way, and people say, oh my God, what a good school. It wasn't. I went there, I graduated 2010. My sister went 9 years later or something like that. That's not great. The school sucks. The whole entire school system in San Francisco sucks. And in probably most of the country. So if I may make a suggestion, and I would support you if you did this, you guys go and become the school board.
Join the school board?
No, yeah, become the school board. So you can completely, you can then completely revamp. You have lots of money. You have all the money you need. You can completely revamp the whole entire education system because that's what needs to be done. And I will make that as a
you know
humble
what's funny is
suggestion.
honestly, I'm not trying to name drop and I won't even say a name, but I had a politician that's very high up in the city take me to Vietnamese food 2 weeks ago and said, you need to run for school board and then eventually mayor. And I rebuked her harshly. Because I said, if we could change the world through politics, Jesus would have came as a politician. My personal belief. But I do believe someone has to do what you're saying. Because when I heard of the vacancy of the school board that's coming up, that there's going to be a running, someone has to do that. I don't feel particularly called to that. I would get very frustrated in school board meetings, and I might hurt someone. I love children, man. I'm so burnt out on adults. Yes. Yeah, that's a good point. Yes.
Going back to your workforce need, do you ever partner with like schools, like not schools, colleges, like programs or people who are in child development, students who want that experience, or even like after school programs that are already existing, like the YMCA, stuff like that?
We have, yeah, that's a great point. I don't think we've tackled any universities or colleges yet, but we actually have served different YMCAs and Boys and Girls Club. It's kind of like a, especially when we were trying out our model, the first couple of years, we just needed to get in front of children, and they had the children. So we said, hey, we'll give your staff a break for a day, 1 day a week for 13 weeks. And of course, the staff loved it. And we were able to hone in our model and work in front of the children. But yeah, we partner with a couple different YMCAs, YMCA Bayview, a couple of beacon schools like Bret Hart Elementary, Everett Middle School, stuff like that. Yeah, we're not opposed to any partnership, really, honestly.
Okay. And then one more. Do you ever visit recovery homes, like specifically ones tailored to like the women and children who are there?
We haven't.
Would you be interested in doing that?
We're always interested in helping. In fact, I don't think we got to where we are by saying no to anything, honestly. We just have to stagger our priorities and figure out how. But we like to say yes to almost everything.
To do things your way? You know, your secret sauce, your brand?
That's a great point. Not other organization staff, but I will say that we have trained over 9 young adults that have come through our program, and we've trained them to work our model. Like right now on our 6 sites, our key staff are now off stage, and the young adults are on doing it. So we're training people because, in fact, our executive staff, we're all in our 40s now, and I told them, hey guys, we need to start using our brain, not our bodies, because it's a very functional work, setting up, tearing down. So we're training 20-year-olds to do it, but haven't thought about other organizational staffs.
I have the mic. Hi.
Hi.
My name's Janet, and I love everything that you're saying. And so, Christian, 2 questions. The quick one is, how long do you stay at the schools, or do you rotate between schools, teams, and that sort of thing? I'm interested in how you're set up. The other thing is, I'm interested in the main way that you've seen so far that you have gotten your mentors and your partnerships. Where are those people coming from?
Okay, so when we pull up to a site, it's usually a 2 to 3 hour program in total. Some sites we've committed to, like when we commit to a site, we're committing indefinitely and for years. And so that's why we're only at 6 over the span of like 4 or 5 years of running the program, because once we commit, we're there, and we try not to leave that school. So we're in 6 different sites. A few of them are neighborhoods, housing projects, and a few of them are public schools. And then how we got partners, basically our strongest partners are community partners and then church partners. But community partners, usually the sequence is we feel led to a particular area. We look for the secret sauce, which is a high concentration of ELI families, where there's a lot of kids and families. Secondly, a space to park our trucks, because without that, there's no point in us being there. And then thirdly, at that point, when we see that there's a need and there's space, then we start asking around who's doing work here already. And then usually we meet 4 or 5 people. I'll tell you, we think that we're like, God's greatest gift to San Francisco. It's not true. There's people out there doing incredible work. No one knows about them, and they're under-resourced. A lot of them are what I call community moms. They have a heart for their community, and they're doing the best they can as like just one woman. And I'm just saying this generally, but it's in like 4 or 5 different places. One woman trying to care for a whole housing project with the very limited resource she has, and she's overwhelmed and stressed out, and she's so happy that we even offered. We like partnering with those type of people because it's like you're there long term. We pop in and out. We'll help you. So we usually ask around in the neighborhood. But now that we've been doing this 7 years, like we kind of know a lot of nonprofits that are doing work. So we try to offer complementary services. We never want to do anything duplicative. All right. Yep.
Thank you, Christian. If you already talked about this already, I apologize. It came a little late. But my question is around backpack drives when it comes to the start of the school year. I know our church loves to put together backpacks, and it seems like a really good way to engage churches in new communities. So I just wanted to see what your guys' plans are and what your needs are for backpacks come fall.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're going to try to hit over 1,500 backpacks. We'd love your support with that. If you want to do a drive, we'd open to that. But August 3rd, Saturday, August 3rd, if you're around and you want to see Mobilize Love in action, it's we host 2 citywide outreaches at Oracle Park in partnership with the Giants. And that'll be our big back to school. We call it a back to school celebration. And so we'll invite all the families out from all the sites that we serve. We'll invite the kids and families for like a resource fair, but also like a back to school celebration carnival thing at Oracle Park. And so we'll distribute backpacks there.
So what are the dates on those? Because that is something that we all can help out with, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Please.
So what are the dates?
Saturday, August 3rd. Okay. Yeah.
Want to make sure we're out there. That's a lot of fun. So go ahead.
Yes.
Hi there. Thank you so much for this great presentation. Could you speak a little bit about the social emotional learning and maybe list 1 or 2 examples that land the most with the kids?
Yeah. And so we use Castle 5 curriculum. We use 3 curriculums. Castle 5, it's a framework where there's 5 different pillars of social emotional health: responsible decision making, managing your emotions. There's 5 different pillars. And I'm not the teacher of it, guys. I'm not the educator. I'm the fundraiser. But there's 5 pillars. So Castle 5 is the framework we use. And then from that, we use Komochis. Komochi is social emotional curriculum that has puppets with it. And then we also use Frenzy. Frenzy has 2 curriculums, which is secular for public schools. That's what we use, Frenzy. And then they have a Christian one that teaches a social emotional learning lesson. But an example would be, and I'm telling you, if I would have learned this as a kid, it would have saved me a lot of heartache. It's called practicing the 4 T's. Take time to think. So we try to train children when you have an unregulated emotion where you just like are about to act up, you just breathe for a second. Just take a moment, breathe, and take time to think. And then we go off from there. What would happen if you did this? What would happen if you didn't do that? And then, so take time to think is a big one. Forgiveness is always a big one that people love. We use balloons. And we talk about how unforgiveness builds up like a balloon, and we blow up the balloon, and eventually it pops, versus just letting it out. And so, yeah, just things like that. Our staff are incredible. Our greatest resource is not our trucks. It's really our staff. Because, yeah.
Thank you. Hello. Awesome presentation. Thank you. I was wondering how, speaking of staff, besides going to the church and asking congregations, what's your volunteer process look like? Is there like a dedicated webpage, and how do you manage all of that?
Yeah, just mobilizelove.org/volunteer. Anyone can sign up to volunteer. You just sign up. We use Eventbrite for all of our outreaches, and so you can sign up there and just show up. There'll be instructions once you do. Mobilizelove.org/volunteer. Yep. It's really word of mouth and email marketing is all we got right now.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's give Christian a big round of applause.